I want to begin by saying that during my entire childhood days, my parents never once treated me, 33F, and my sister, Mary, 26F, differently. Despite the significant age gap between us, they were always consistent in their love, care, and attention toward both of us. From what I can remember, there wasn't any favoritism or special treatment whatsoever. While me and Mary were not exactly each other's best friends, we got along just fine. Being the oldest sibling, I never really fought with her much and just let her do whatever she wanted. I am mentioning all this beforehand to give an idea about my family dynamics because what I am about to write next is something that completely blindsided me. You see, just 2 years ago, my sister got married in this beautiful, grand ceremony that my parents generously paid for. It was everything she had dreamed of, and she tied the knot with her college sweetheart, Jack. They had been together for years, and it seemed like a natural progression for them to finally get married. Watching them exchange vows was such a heartwarming experience for us. They looked so in love, and from the outside, everything about their relationship seemed perfect. Everyone, including myself, was thrilled to see them take this step in life. I was genuinely happy for her because it felt like she had finally got everything she wanted. After the wedding, like many newlyweds, they wanted to start a family. I knew they had been trying for quite some time to get pregnant but had faced some challenges. It was hard watching her go through that, especially knowing how much she wanted to become a mother. But then, just a few months ago, everything changed. She tested positive and found out she was pregnant. My sister and Jack were over the moon. It was the news they had been longing to hear for what felt like ages. I remember feeling so elated for them because I knew how badly they wanted this. It felt like their lives were finally falling into place. As for me, I've been married to my husband, Cleo, for the past 6 years, and we have a young son together. Motherhood has been such an incredible journey for me, and I was beyond excited that my sister was finally going to experience it too. She has always been a loving and attentive aunt to my son, and I know she's going to be a wonderful mother. I looked forward to the idea of our kids growing up together, becoming best friends, and sharing a bond better than what we had growing up. I envisioned family gatherings where they'd be inseparable, and I felt this would bring my sister and me even closer, as we navigated parenthood side by side. Everything seemed perfect, and I truly believed we were on the brink of a new, exciting chapter in both of our lives. That's why I was completely taken aback when one day Mary called me to tell me that one of her ex-boyfriends from high school, David, had reached out to her after all these years. She seemed amused by the situation, laughing as she explained that he had somehow found out about her pregnancy and had congratulated her. As they got to talking, they ended up reconnecting. Right away, hearing David's name made me uneasy. My mind flashed back to the past. I remembered David all too well from our high school days, and I had never liked him. In fact, from what I could recall, he was nothing but trouble. He was always pulling some prank or another, often landing himself in hot water with the school authorities. He got suspended more times than I could count, and his reputation was far from good. What made matters worse was the history he had with Mary. I vividly remembered how David had cheated on her, and not just with anyone, it was with one of her closest friends. That betrayal had crushed Mary back then. She had spent several nights crying. She had been devastated, and it took her a long time to move on from the pain he caused. With all of that in mind, I immediately told her my thoughts. I reminded her of everything he had put her through. I made it clear that I thought he was bad news, just as he had been back in high school. I firmly believed that after so many years, there was no good reason for her to entertain him now, especially given their history. But to my surprise, Mary didn't seem concerned. In fact, she quickly brushed off my worries as if they didn't matter. She told me that all of that had happened years ago and assured me that David had grown up since then. According to her, he had become a responsible and mature person. I wasn't convinced, but she was clearly excited about reconnecting with him. She even mentioned that David wanted to meet up with her, and she seemed genuinely happy about the idea. I didn't like it at all. Deep down, I wished she wouldn't go through with meeting him, but at the same time, I realized that there was only so much I could say. So, I decided to keep my mouth shut and hope that everything would be okay. Mary met with David as planned and seemed to have a wonderful time. She called me the next week, bubbling with excitement, to share every detail about their meetup. She couldn't stop gushing over how handsome David looked and how much he had changed physically. She emphasized how tall and muscular he had become, speaking with an enthusiasm that made me uncomfortable. As I listened to her rave about him, I couldn't help but shake my head. It wasn't just the way she was praising his appearance that bothered me, but also how she seemed captivated by the fact that he remembered every single detail about her past. I asked Mary what her husband, Jack, thought about her meeting up with an old high school ex. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, and I could sense a shift in her tone. She then admitted that she hadn't mentioned anything to him. When I asked her why, she explained that Jack might get jealous if he knew about her meeting with David. This made me even more uneasy, as it felt like Mary was knowingly keeping something from her husband that she should have been open about. She went on to justify her decision by saying that Jack didn't need to know everything about her life. That statement really didn't sit well with me. While I understand that every marriage has its boundaries and personal space, keeping something like this, meeting up with an ex, especially one with such a complicated history, from her husband seemed wrong. I didn't want to argue with my sister, so I firmly told Mary that as long as she didn't meet David again, things might still be fine. I hoped she would realize that continuing to see him wasn't a good idea, especially if she planned on hiding it from Jack. But to my surprise, Mary confessed that she had already made plans to meet David for lunch the very next day. She didn't seem remorseful at all about it. In fact, she tried to justify it by saying she was simply enjoying reconnecting with a familiar face from her past, and that it wasn't a big deal. Over the next 2 months, Mary continued to secretly meet up with David, all while still being pregnant with Jack's child. I found it incredibly troubling that Jack remained completely unaware of what was going on behind his back. Every now and then, Mary would update me about her meetings with David, and it became clear to me that she was getting more and more involved with him than she should have been. There was a shift in the way she talked about him. It wasn't just casual anymore, it felt like something more intimate, more emotionally connected. I could sense that she was slowly crossing a line, and it worried me deeply. I brought the issue up with my husband, Cleo, because I didn't know what to do. I wanted to make sure I wasn't overreacting, but I also needed advice. Cleo listened patiently, and while he didn't approve of what Mary was doing, he felt strongly that we shouldn't interfere in her marriage. I begrudgingly agreed with him, but that nagging feeling of unease stuck with me. Something about the situation didn't sit right in my gut, and I couldn't just ignore it. Then, one evening, I was out with some friends, enjoying a casual night out, when I walked into a restaurant and spotted Mary sitting with David. They were tucked away in a corner booth, almost hidden from plain view. At first, I didn't want to believe it was them, but as I got closer, there was no mistaking it. My heart sank as I watched my sister, completely unaware of my presence, sitting there with David. They were playing with each other's fingers, smiling, blushing, and locking eyes in a way that made them look like they were lovers, not old friends catching up. I was furious. The sight of them together like that made my blood boil. Every instinct in me wanted to march over to that table and confront Mary right then and there. I felt so angry, not just for Jack, but for the way she was handling the whole situation. But as much as I wanted to, I realized that confronting her in public, in front of everyone, would cause a scene and probably embarrass her. It wasn't the right place or time for that. So instead, I made a quick decision. I quietly took out my phone and snapped a few pictures and videos of Mary and David together. I needed undeniable proof if I was going to confront her about this later. Without solid evidence, I knew she might try to brush it off or downplay the situation, but what I saw was too clear to ignore. After getting the proof, I went to sit with my friends in the opposite corner of the restaurant, trying to act normal while I processed what I had just witnessed. Inside, I felt torn apart. I couldn't stop thinking about Jack, how clueless he was, how much he trusted Mary, the mother of his unborn kid, and how this betrayal would hurt him. That night, I tried to reach out to Mary multiple times, hoping to confront her, but she wasn't answering any of my calls. I was growing more anxious by the minute, so I decided to call Jack to check in on her. When I asked him where Mary was, he casually told me that she was having a girls' night out and spending the night with one of her best friends. I felt an overwhelming sense of guilt and anger because I knew very well that she was most likely with David. I gently pressed him, asking if he was certain that Mary was with her friend, but he just laughed, completely unsuspecting. He said, "Why wouldn't she be?" Jack had no reason to doubt her, and it hurt to see how blind he was to the situation. I felt awful for him, knowing the truth but not being able to share it, at least, not yet. I knew I couldn't just drop that kind of bombshell on him without first speaking to Mary directly. I needed to hear her side and get to the bottom of what was happening before making any drastic moves. The next day, Mary finally called me back, unaware that I knew everything. She sounded normal, even cheerful, as if nothing was wrong. I decided to test the waters by asking her what she had been up to the previous evening. Without hesitation, she started to lie, telling me she was out with her best friend, having cocktails. I could barely contain my frustration as I listened to her fabricate a story, pretending as though everything was fine. I scoffed and bluntly told her to stop lying to me. I didn't beat around the bush. I told her that I had seen her with David at the restaurant last evening. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear her breathing heavily. Mary didn't try to deny it, and she went quiet, probably realizing that she was caught and there was no point in pretending anymore. I took a deep breath and told her that she needed to stop what she was doing and think about the consequences, especially for her unborn child. I reminded her that she wasn't just hurting Jack by doing this, but she was jeopardizing her entire family's future. I was firm in telling her that whatever was going on with David needed to end immediately. I could tell she was rattled by my words, but whether she was truly remorseful or just caught off guard, I wasn't sure yet. All I knew was that I couldn't let her continue this affair in secret, and it was up to her now to decide whether she was going to make things right or let everything fall apart. However, Mary became defensive and angry. Her voice grew sharp as she told me that I had no right to lecture her about her life. She insisted that she had certain needs and cravings during her pregnancy which only David could fulfill. Hearing those words made me want to puke. She continued to assure me that she knew exactly what she was doing, and that I didn't understand the complexities of her marriage. According to her, David was saving her from what she described as a boring and unfulfilling life. Hearing her say that was shocking. Up until David had reappeared in her life, Mary had never once expressed any dissatisfaction in her marriage. However, suddenly she had so many complaints. It felt like she was just trying to justify the cheating in her head by coming up with random things. I argued back, reminding her that she had always spoken highly of Jack, how loyal, considerate, and kind he was. Jack had been nothing but supportive and loving throughout their marriage, and if she had concerns or felt unhappy, she should talk to her husband directly rather than betray him. Cheating wasn't the answer. But instead of listening, Mary raised her voice, saying that David understood her in a way Jack never could and that she had already crafted a plan for her future. Her tone sent chills down my spine, so I asked her straight out what she meant by that. I feared the worst, and unfortunately, my fears were confirmed. Without hesitation, Mary confessed that she wasn't planning on leaving Jack until after the baby was born. She explained coldly that this timing was deliberate as she didn't want to be blamed for the divorce if she tried to leave her husband while still pregnant. She also wanted to ensure that she would receive child support, and that she would be entitled to a significant amount of alimony. I froze when I heard this. She was planning to manipulate the situation to her advantage, using the birth of her child as leverage to get financial security. I shook my head and told her straight out that she sounded like a crazy person. This wasn't the Mary that first knew. It was like I was talking to someone I didn't even recognize. I reminded her again of how loyal Jack had been to her throughout their relationship, how he stood by her through thick and thin, even during the tough times. But Mary continued to argue that although she loved Jack, it wasn't in a romantic way anymore and that their relationship had grown old and stale. She said she needed to feel something exciting again, and that's what David gave her. He made her feel alive in a way Jack no longer did. I was furious, but more than that, I was heartbroken. Mary's plan was plain cruel, and I told her as much. I warned her that treating Jack, her husband, so coldly while she plotted to leave him was beyond unfair. But she just scoffed at me, shrugging off everything I said, and told me that as her sister I just needed to support her. Over the next few weeks, Mary continued to see David despite our conversation. She would regularly lie to Jack, telling him that she was spending time with me or staying at a friend's house. She even started asking me to cover for her if Jack ever called to check in. I was growing tired of her recklessness. Each time she dragged me into her web of lies, I felt more and more conflicted. I wanted to support my sister, but how could I, when what she was doing was so wrong? Her behavior wasn't just hurting her marriage, it was putting me in a terrible position too. I didn't want to be an accomplice to her deceit. Then, out of the blue, Mary announced that she had planned a baby shower to celebrate her baby's upcoming arrival. I almost couldn't believe her audacity. How could a woman who was having an ongoing affair with another man, while pregnant with her husband's baby, think about throwing a baby shower and act like nothing was wrong? When I arrived at the baby shower, I was struck by how normal everything seemed on the surface. Mary and Jack appeared happy, and if you didn't know the truth, you'd think they were just a regular, loving couple about to welcome their first child into the world. Mary acted as if she had no care in the world, completely ignoring the fact that she was having an affair. The sight of her and Jack cutting a cake together to reveal the gender of their baby, a boy, was bittersweet. I felt a rush of happiness, knowing I was going to be an aunt, but at the same time, I was burdened by the guilt of what I knew. Jack was standing there, excited about their future together, completely unaware of the betrayal happening right under his nose. It was heart-wrenching. Then, in the middle of the shower, I noticed Mary excusing herself to take a phone call. She disappeared into the other room, and when she returned, she casually told me that it had been David on the phone. He had called because he missed her, and she was already making plans to see him that night. I could barely believe what I was hearing. Right there, during her own baby shower, she was thinking about spending the night with another man. And, as usual, she intended to lie to Jack, saying she was staying at her friend's house when she was really going to be with David. I couldn't hold back any longer. I shook my head in disbelief and told her straight up that this whole situation was getting out of hand. But Mary, unfazed as ever, brushed off my concerns. She told me that I needed to relax, insisting that she knew what she was doing. Her nonchalance was maddening. At that point, I knew I had reached my breaking point. I could no longer stay silent or be complicit in Mary's deceit. As I walked back into the room after our conversation, Jack looked at me, sensing something was off. He asked me, out of concern, if everything was okay. My heart was racing, and my voice was shaky as I prepared myself for what I knew I had to do. I glanced around the room at all the familiar faces, our family, friends, and Jack himself, who still had no idea about the betrayal unfolding around him. My sister, Mary, who had always been so close to me, was subtly shaking her head, silently pleading with me to stay quiet, to continue covering for her. But I knew this was my chance to come clean, to tell the truth, and free myself from this burden. With a trembling voice, I announced to Jack that there was something he needed to know. I took a deep breath before admitting everything. Mary had been having an affair. The room went completely silent as everyone turned to me, their faces filled with confusion. I recounted everything that my sister had been doing behind Jack's back and how she had even forced me and her friends to cover up for her. I broke down and apologized to Jack for not admitting to him sooner. The room erupted in shock, and I could see everyone trying to process what they had just heard. My mother's face twisted in disbelief as she demanded to know what I was talking about. She turned to Mary, who still sat frozen, and asked if it was true. Mary tried to act confused, pretending she had no idea what I was saying. I then pulled out my phone and showed everyone the pictures and messages I had taken as proof of Mary's affair with David. I didn't want to humiliate her, but the truth needed to come out. I then revealed to Jack her plan to leave him after the baby was born to secure alimony and child support without facing the blame for the divorce. Jack's eyes widened in disbelief as he stared at the pictures of Mary and David together, the messages confirming their relationship. Then, Jack and Mary erupted into a massive argument. At first, Mary tried to deflect and deny it all, but faced with undeniable proof, she finally broke down and admitted everything. The betrayal was too much for Jack to handle. He was devastated. In the end, the evidence I had provided helped Jack in the divorce proceedings that dragged on for months. When Mary finally gave birth to their son, Jack insisted on a paternity test, and only after it was proved that he was indeed the father, he agreed to pay for child support. However, during the divorce proceedings, the judge ruled that he was not required to pay any alimony, given Mary's infidelity. During these months, watching my sister face the consequences of her choices was incredibly hard. I knew revealing the truth was the right thing to do, but I hadn't anticipated the backlash that would come from my own family. Instead of holding Mary accountable for her actions, my parents turned all their anger and frustrations towards me. They were furious, accusing me of sabotaging Mary's happiness out of spite and jealousy. They kept repeating that family is family, and insisted that I should have protected my sister's secret, no matter how terrible her actions were. I was really taken aback by how much they suddenly favored my sister over me when they had never done that before, and at one point I even started to doubt myself, thinking if I really made the right move by exposing her. However, things escalated even further when my parents and Mary, in their desperation and irrational anger, tried to sabotage my own marriage. My parents actually called my husband, Cleo, demanding that he divorce me. They reasoned that since I had made Jack divorce Mary, I didn't deserve to have a husband or a happy marriage either. In fact, Dad told Cleo that he always felt that he was too good for me, and my mom agreed with him. It was as if they wanted to see me suffer in the same way they believed Mary had suffered, even though it was Mary's choices that had led to her downfall. Thankfully, Cleo didn't even take them seriously. He laughed at the absurdity of their request and immediately dismissed it. He knew I had acted out of concern for Jack, and he was disgusted by my parents' attempts to ruin our marriage out of spite. Then, Mary tried to come up with an elaborate lie, claiming that she had caught me cheating with a man from my office and how I was the one who always encouraged her to cheat during her marriage. She was desperate to turn the tables on me and tarnish my reputation. But my husband knew they were all lies. Her attempt to discredit me failed miserably, and all it did was make me even more disgusted with how far my family was willing to go to punish me for doing the right thing. I realized then that everyone except my husband was too blinded by their misguided loyalty to Mary to see the bigger picture. For the sake of my own mental health, I made the difficult decision to have no contact with my family. Cutting them out of my life wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I needed to protect my peace and my sanity. My husband and I moved forward, stronger than ever, and I found solace in the fact that I had stood by my principles, even when it meant standing alone. It's been 8 months of no contact when, out of the blue, my parents emailed me yesterday. I had blocked them everywhere, except on Gmail, which I must have overlooked. In the email, they admitted they were wrong to blindly support Mary. They explained that they had been too focused on protecting her because she was the youngest, and seeing her in pain made them act without thinking. This was something I had always hoped they would understand one day, but I wasn't expecting it to happen, after all the harm they had done to me. They also wrote how Mary, who had moved back in with them after her divorce, had also moved David in with her. Apparently they were loud, obnoxious, and didn't help my parents out with any bills. With 2 more family members, my mother had to do even more chores around the house because no one else helped. Mary was also forcing my parents to babysit her son while she would be out spending time with David. Hence, my parents were at their wits' ends and were reaching out to me, practically begging me to help them. They had written how I should help them talk to Mary, who refuses to listen to them, and get her and her new family to move out immediately. Ida, if I refuse to help out my parents after everything that has been done to me? Update 1. Here's what I think. After everything that's happened, I think my parents are only reaching out to me because they know I am the only person who can help them out and they have no one else to turn to. However, I am not too keen to help them. These were the same people who had turned their backs on me, tried to ruin my marriage, and called me a traitor just for telling the truth. Now, they want my help because they can't control the very person they had chosen to defend. Because of their foolishness, my sister and her affair partner are now playing happy family while living for free at my parents' home. I have also reached out to Jack and let him know about the difficulties that my parents are facing due to Mary and David. I asked him to ensure that his kids are not being neglected at their place, and he has assured me that he will be looking into it. Update 2. Thank you everyone for your suggestions. I was planning to ignore my parents' email, but my dad sent me another one. This time, he accused me of abandoning him and mom by not helping them in their time of need. He said they were really struggling financially and asked if I could send them $200 every month at least since I have such a great job. He claimed this would help them immensely. I was furious reading this and felt I had to reply, even just to put an end to it. I am just copying and pasting here what I emailed back to him. Dad, you and mom have shown yourselves to be the worst kind of parents. How dare you ask me for help after you tried to destroy my marriage just a few months ago? Ari lied and made up stories about me and a coworker to make my husband think I was cheating, and you and mom supported her without a second thought. None of you even once stopped to realize how cruelly I was being treated just for doing the right thing. Now you're asking me for money because your precious daughter and her affair partner are causing problems in your house? You deserve everything that's happening to you. You dug your grave, now lay in it. P.S. Cleo and I are doing great. My son doesn't miss you at all. Cleo's parents are far better grandparents than you and mom could ever be. I hope reading this email will shut them up for good. Update 3. Hi fellow Redditors. It's been 4 months since my last update. After sending my last email to my parents, they've left me alone, which has been a relief. I've heard from some relatives that apparently, things escalated even further with Mary and my parents. During a heated argument with my mother over the care of Mary's son, Mary attacked her. My mother had been urging Mary to spend more time with the child, and Mary perceived this as an insult, leading to the confrontation. The police had to be called but no charges were filed. After that, some of our relatives helped my parents forcibly remove Mary and David from my parents' home. Hearing about these events, I feel a sense of relief and validation. I'm glad I'm no longer a part of all that drama. My parents are clearly dealing with the consequences of their choices. While it's sad that things have ended up this way, I've learned how to prioritize my own well-being and happiness. Currently, my husband and I are planning on taking a vacation to unwind and enjoy some quality time together, since we haven't had a chance to do that for a while.